get to?
Yeah, it's actually, there's a list of things that help people get out of poverty, and that is one of them. An engaging personality is one of them. Education is one. A connection to someone outside of poverty is one. But it ranks up there with connections to people outside in education, for sure. Okay, so let's look at middle class, and I'm hoping you guys could do all of this. But it just kind of shows you, you know, the difference in the culture. The one on here I like, I'll draw your attention to, is number 6. Using a credit card, a checking account, a savings account. Understanding insurance. So 2 things there I want to talk about. One, why would insurance not be important in poverty based on what we talked about?
You don't have anything to insure.
You don't have, I'm sorry?
You have very little to insure.
Right,
What
so
you do
just
have, you
being
can't
able to
afford.
pay the premium, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
But what value do you even see in the premium? Because insurance is a guarantee for something that might happen in the
Future.
And am I future-minded? No, I'm survival-minded. I'm 2 days. I'm not thinking about what might happen. So insurance is not even really on my radar. So that's one I want to point out. And the other is using a credit card, using a debit card, using a checking account. Very challenging. My own daughter that I adopted and from poverty culture, brought into my home, lived with me for 2 years before we sent her off to college. And she had to pay her phone bill, and we set up a checking account so that she could pay bills, sent her off to college. The phone bill was coming home, and she was going to pay me from college and write checks, right? So I brought a little example here. This is a check that my daughter grew up in poverty, 2 years in middle class, living in my home. She sent me for her phone bill. You in the front are going to have to help me because I know no one else is going to be able to see it. Can you tell what she did wrong?
Can't see it from here.
Where is it signed?
It's not sent back.
See it like she endorsed it.
She endorsed it. Because that's all she ever did with a check was endorse it. She had never written one. So just learning how to, I mean, this is my daughter who lived with me for 2 years. I didn't even think to, and I was a certified trainer at that point. I didn't think to teach her how to write a check before I sent her away, right? I mean, you don't know how. My other daughter, we had to put on an airplane right when we first adopted her, and she didn't have a driver's license yet. Try putting someone on an airplane without a driver's license, without a credit card. It's next to impossible. So you're trying to navigate a middle class world, a world that works on middle class values and cultures. It's very challenging. So let's look at the wealth one. And the reason I do this wealth one is I really want to create some empathy in you for people who are in poverty, who are trying to get to middle class, and their lack of understanding of how to navigate that world. Now, maybe some of you in this room are from wealth, and this is like easy for you, but it's not for me. There's some things on here that I don't know how to do. I don't know anything about the Junior League. I don't have a particular artist that I'm supporting. I don't hire a decorator at Christmas. I don't have a jet. Does anybody here have a jet? Or can order, you know, like off a French menu and order in French, right?
I don't even have staff in one house.
Okay, right. So when we step into wealth, that's the culture that we need to understand. And so how do we learn that? Generationally, it's passed down, right? Or what if you marry somebody? So significant relationship is how you learn. When I was going to get trained, I had to go to Minnesota to get trained to be, I'm a certified poverty trainer, whatever that means. And when I was going to Minnesota to get trained, I had a girlfriend that had a sister that lived in the same town where I was being trained. And she said, Nancy, let's go together, we can stay at my sister's house. And I thought, oh, the Lord is providing for me to go do this. Because I was a ministry director at the time, but I was taking time off work and I was paying for this training on my own. And so I thought, this is great. We're going to share gas money. I'm going to have free lodging. So we're driving there. We're like 20 minutes out, and my girlfriend calls her sister and says, hey, Lori, we're 20 minutes away. And Lori says, oh, I forgot this was the weekend you were coming. But don't worry about it because the maid is here now, and I'll have her go open up the guest house. And I'm having a dinner tonight, and what size dress does your friend wear? I had no idea, none. I swear to you, I'm not being dramatic. I had no idea that my friend's sister was extremely wealthy. She lived on Lake Minnetonka, had a guest home. So I walk into extreme wealth in a guest home with a gown to put on for dinner, and I'm going for poverty training. So God is funny, isn't he? He's so funny. I had to totally rely on my friend. I had to pick a wine. I had to pick a goblet. I didn't know how to use the silverware. I couldn't navigate, but my friend was right next to me the entire night, whispering in my ear, oh, it's that, I don't even remember now. Whatever the meat was, that was the wine. And so I kind of made it through by what she was whispering in my ear. Go to the next slide. I mean, does anybody understand that? So this is what people in poverty, when they try to get to middle class, what they're trying to navigate, just they don't understand the culture. Make sense? Okay, I'm running a little bit behind. You want me done by 8:45, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Okay, so to better understand people from poverty, the definition of poverty we're going to use is the extent to which an individual does without resources. Now, I like that word resources because people tend to think poverty is about one thing and one thing only, and that would be money. It's not. It's about more than that. We'll talk about what it's about, but before I get there, I just want to challenge you to think about this. A lot of people use the word underprivileged. I personally don't use that word. I don't use that word because I think when you use the word underprivileged, it implies status. It implies I have privileges that you don't, and it makes me higher than you. I don't use that word. I use the word under-resourced. So when I'm working with people in poverty, especially in their hearing, but it's just a habit now, I use the word under-resourced. I'm not more privileged than they am, I just have more resources than they do. So consider making that change in your vocabulary. If you want to look at that definition of resources, I'm going to call your attention to, well, we talked about financial, right? And financial is actually one of the lower on the list of resources to leave poverty. The most important resource, if you're trying to leave poverty and get to middle class, the most important resource is emotional resources. And emotional resources are learned from role models. Now, this is one of our biggest problems in the city. We don't have role models anymore. People get educated, and because there's a safety issue, primarily, real estate issues, education issues, they leave. And so we don't have healthy role models. And that makes it very challenging. What does a healthy man look like? If I've grown up in the city and there are no healthy men, there are no men working, there are no men parenting their children, how do I know what a healthy man looks like? How do I attract a healthy man? They're not there. So healthy role models are huge. And I would just encourage any of you, if your heart really, when you come back, just is really pulled to missions work, consider Detroit. We need strong, healthy male role models. Well, Nancy, what do I do when I get there? I don't care. Be healthy. Find something to do. Mentor somebody. It doesn't matter. We just need healthy men in the city. We need to know that a man is a protector and a provider, and we don't know that because we don't see it. So just plant that seed. So other definitions of resources here, we've got financial, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, support systems, relationships, and role models. And I want to emphasize there, healthy relationships, because we have plenty of relationships. Remember, the center of our circle is relationship. We have relationships, but healthy relationships are a resource. And then hidden roles, we're going to talk about that. And then I would also say these resources are interconnected. So when you have a physical liability, a lot of times that will cause emotional problems, right? I have a sister who has a degenerative brain disease. So she's handicapped. So she struggles with depression, right? She probably wouldn't struggle with depression if she didn't have the handicap. So these can also have cascading effects. So poverty is about a lot more than money. Okay. So we've got some, I think this next slide are going to come up one at a time. Awesome, thanks. So just some key points to keep in mind. Poverty occurs in all races and in all countries. So in the U.S., our poverty tends to be relative because we have that safety net, but not so in the developing world. It absolutely can be absolute. The next one, economic class is a continuous line, not a clear-cut distinction. So it's on a spectrum, right? We all kind of fall on a spectrum. And then we talked about generational and situational already. Those are two different things. So the work that I talk about is based on patterns. So I'm not here to stereotype, okay? There's exceptions to all patterns. But we tend to be economically segregated in America. So a lot of us, if we have been born and raised in middle class, as we just showed from those other slides, we don't understand the rules of poverty and we don't understand the rules of wealth. And then, go ahead. You tend to bring with you the hidden rules of the class that you were raised, right? So even when you do see people from poverty get into middle class, you might see them do some things that are confusing or you might feel judgmental towards because they have those hidden rules that they brought to middle class with them and they still operate with those, okay? And then schools and businesses operate from middle class norms. I talked about my daughter trying to take a flight, right? With no credit card and no driver's license. Right, so airlines run on middle class rules. If you think about it, everything in our society pretty much runs on middle class rules. So it makes it very challenging to navigate that system. Think about if our entire society ran on wealth rules. I mean, we'd be lost, right? We would have a hard time because we just wouldn't understand. So we're very, we say we have normalized middle class. Is anyone in here left-handed? Yes, yay, there's a lot of you. Okay, loud please. Those of you who are left-handed, popcorn up. One or two things that